I'm not getting any video, audio.
What? Welcome everyone to the November 2nd, 2021 meeting of the Long Range Vineyard Transportation Task Force of the Steamship Authority.
Damn it.
I would like to inform everyone that the Steamship Authority and Steve Beatty of MBTV are making audio and video recordings of today's meeting. And is there anyone else making a recording of today's meeting? If so, please identify yourself by pressing the raise your hand icon, or if you are joining by phone, pressing *9 on your keypad. And when you're recognized, please state your name for the record. Thank you. No one has done that, so I'm assuming no one else is making a recording of today's meeting. In accordance with Section 20 of Chapter 20 of the Acts of 2021, all task force members are participating remotely in today's meeting by the Zoom video conferencing app, and all members hopefully will be clearly audible to each other. Also pursuant to that statute, the Steamship Authority has ensured public access to the deliberations of the task force today for interested members of the public via Zoom. And a link to access this meeting via Zoom has been provided in the meeting notice for today's meeting. And clearly it was successful because we now have 16 attendees as well as 11 of us. So I would like to welcome everyone today, and in particular, welcome our new task force member, Tom Ferranti. Tom is the appointee of the Falmouth Economic Development and Industrial Corporation. In his real life, since 2003, he has been the Director of Planning and Construction with the Mashpee Commons Limited Partnership and involved with the construction and planning of Mashpee Commons. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you very much. I'm happy to be here and part of the task force.
And then our other welcome today and introduction is to Justin Paulson, who is the new Executive Director of the New Bedford Port Authority. Justin, from what I gather from the press release announcing his appointment earlier this year in July, he started out by managing operations for towboat vessels in Seattle, Washington. He then joined Holland America Line and then went to Silver Sea Cruises, guiding strategic planning and product development for that cruise line. And then most recently, before joining the New Bedford Port Authority, he was Vice President and Executive Director of Port NYC for the New York City Economic Development Corporation, where he oversaw cruise terminals in Manhattan and Brooklyn, rail, aviation, freight, and offshore wind assets, and the Dock NYC program, although I don't know what that's about, but that's what it said. Maybe, were you involved in the ferry operations there that were coming from New Jersey and Connecticut at all, Justin?
No, NYC Ferry was a separate standalone group within the Economic Development Corporation, although within my portfolio, I had a number of landing assets to manage. So, and Dock NYC was really, it was a portfolio of various waterfront sites, like over 10,000 linear feet of unused waterfront assets in New York City. And the idea was to roll them all into a program that offered short-term licenses for use to sort of streamline the process to get them activated. So someone who wanted to operate a dinner vessel or some sort of commercial vessel could apply for a permit on a short-term basis and activate the site. So that was the Dock NYC program.
Right, so you did the heavy lifting, actually. So
yeah, just, you know, we had an operating agreement with a third-party operator to actually manage the program. So for me, it was really just managing the vendor.
Great. Well, welcome and thank you for joining us today. We have been looking forward to this meeting for a while, and we were hoping that you could, we could start by having you just give us a description that you think is pertinent for our purposes of the New Bedford Port Authority, The North Terminal 2, I understand from your email, which is a different location than North Terminal 1 in New Bedford, and what the status of that project is.
Sure. Yeah, as you can imagine, North Terminal 1 and North Terminal 2 sort of sounds related, similar, but they're really just two projects that are north of the Route 6 bridge. So everything, the New Bedford Harbor is sort of bifurcated by Route 6 and Fish Island and Pope's Island. So everything that's north of there gets labeled north, and everything below it is south. You know, where we, in the vicinity of the former EPA dewatering facility, we have the North Terminal Project, Bulkhead Extension Project, which is being funded by a MARAD grant. And then north of there, but south of 195, we have the North Terminal 2 project, which is being funded by an EDA grant and is wrapped up in a larger project that also includes bulkhead remediation, refendering for a number of sites in the harbor, including Pier 3, Steamship Pier, and the South Terminal Fish Houses. So the North Terminal 2 project is really land reclamation. So it's filling in a gully and creating about 100 feet of bulkhead and about just shy of an acre of upland space. You know, the geography is it's in the northern part of the harbor, kind of on the edge of town. The characteristics of the site, given that it's infill of a gully, means that it's a fairly narrow strip of land. The characteristics, we think, constrain a lot of normal uses that we might contemplate for the site. And one of the things that has constantly surfaced in conversations is use as a roll-on, roll-off site. So really that's our interest, is in understanding if there is potential use as a roll-on, roll-off site. We think that this could potentially interconnect with and help contribute to solving an issue that the Steamship Authority has with finding off-Cape transportation network. And so to sort of evaluate this opportunity, we anticipate issuing an RFI, a request for interest on this site, you know, expecting, you know, the market to really dictate whether there is, you know, what would need to go in once we deliver the site, you know, with the bulkhead and the infill, what else in terms of infrastructure investment and development would need to go in. The anticipated throughput constraints that would be limited on that site, you know, the benefits, you know, how many jobs are created, a pro forma, to understand whether or not it's economically feasible on that site, and any traffic mitigation. So that's really what we would expect from an RFI. And, you know, depending on the response that the market gives us for interest in that site, that would really inform, you know, how we would potentially respond to an RFP for, you know, off-Cape transportation. So, you know, timing wise, our project, you know, we think we are going to go out to bid, you know, shortly in the next few weeks or months. Construction is expected to be completed just after the beginning of the year 2023, so say February 2023. So that's when the site will be delivered to the design that we're currently permitted for, which is essentially just bulkhead. And so anything beyond that, installation of a ramp, anything specifically required for roll-on, roll-off operations would need to be beyond that February 2023 date, would need to be permitted, designed, et cetera. So it would likely be another 8 to 12 months, I think, past that February 2023 date where the site would be just about ready for roll-on, roll-off operations. So that's really North Terminal 2.
Do you mind if I share my computer screen, which I have put a Google Maps of New Bedford Harbor?
Sure.
Is that all right?
Yes.
Okay.
That would
Yes,
be great. I
please.
was gonna
Yeah, that'll
ask
be
if we had
helpful.
that available.
Okay.
Yeah. So the site is it's on Herman Melville Boulevard and Wamsutta Street. So it's on kind of really close to where that 2 is, just west of that 2.
Okay. So that's the entire New Bedford Harbor. That's
right. That's the hurricane barrier. And it's about 3 miles from the hurricane barrier up to Route 195. And as you can see there, that's Pope's Island Marina in the middle, Pope's Island in the middle that really bifurcates. So yeah, you can see where it says Sea Trade International
up here.
right there. It's that gully that's right just to the south of there, that little triangle sliver that's going to be filled in.
Okay.
So that's what we're talking about. And what's going to be created there is about 100 feet of bulkhead, and then filling that in creates another almost an acre.
Right. Thank you. Has everyone seen enough of Google Maps? I hope that helps. Let me back out just so people get a sense of where it is.
And so, I think the benefit of that site is that, it is not adjacent or proximate to our, central historic waterfront. We would accept, all different types of cargo coming across there. So I'm specifically referring to, refuse, containers of garbage. Would be fine. There's quick access to the roadway. It wouldn't disrupt or disturb tourism activities in the central waterfront. It's just a matter of is 100 feet of bulkhead enough? What would be the needs of a vessel serving that, and the economics and return to the city. To make sure that that's the best and highest use for that site. Because just looking at Google Maps of New Bedford Harbor, you can see we don't have a lot of extra space. And so the baseline is really the economic activity based around berthing fishing vessels there, so.
Justin, if I could ask, after you finish your in February of 2023, is the RFI that you're putting out for someone to actually finish tailoring the site to its purposes and then operating the site itself?
Yeah, that's right. So, we are going to deliver the project as it's currently designed and permitted, which is essentially building the cells and then backfilling and building the bulkhead. The RFI will be specifically tailored to find an operator. I think down the road we could discuss the economics and the agreement with the operator to understand, depending on our funding situation, if we could fund any infrastructure that would help out an operator. But I think we would be looking for an operator to come in, permit, fund, design, and build whatever roll-on, roll-off infrastructure is needed.
May I ask a question, Justin?
But I mean, that's a long way down the road. I mean, and that's a potential conversation for later.
Beyond the bulkhead, would there be any dredging that's going to be done? I just took a quick look at the nautical chart, and doesn't look like there's a lot of water until you get out close.
Yeah, yeah, that's part of our dredging program. It's included in there.
I mean, our idea, as you may know, we've been tasked with the assignment of developing a request for proposals for a private operator to provide freight service between the Vineyard and New Bedford. And our goal is to try to take into account all the community's interests in developing that. What we were hoping is that this North Terminal 2 would, with the new operator that you have in a few years, would be a multi-use facility. And we don't expect that any freight service from New Bedford would take up the slip 24 hours a day. We hope that there would be other services there. Is that something that you see? We would like to be in a position when that is available to have something in place if we can. And is that something that you think that we should check back in 6 months, a year, or something that we should get started on now?
So a couple questions. What do you have in mind for mixed use? Like passenger? What is contemplated as mixed use?
Oh, I thought mixed use was for your facility. I think we were looking at, but this is just an initial discussion. So we want to make clear
Right.
that we have
Right.
nothing at all in mind. You have a passenger service from the State Pier to the Vineyard that we enjoy a lot. All of us hope that succeeds. And you have the Wells Tooth parking lot facilitating that. So we're looking principally at a freight service. That's our goal here. And I think that's certainly, I'll let them speak for themselves, but that would be the town of Falmouth's goal, is to have some of the freight that is currently shipped from Woods Hole, shipped from New Bedford and back and forth. So that's what we would be
Right.
looking at, primarily a freight service, if that's the type of facility that you're looking at in terms of, I guess.
Yeah, that's what we're looking at. Yeah, I mean, that's what we're contemplating for this site. Can I ask the clarifying question about the RFP? Is the RFP geographically agnostic, or is it specifically pointed to New Bedford?
Well, we haven't drafted it yet, and it's
Okay.
So that's the first answer. But in the late 1990s, previous staff members at the Steamship Authority tried to look all over the coast of the South Coast and beyond to try to find a suitable a site for a off-Cape freight ferry service. And the only one that the staff was able to identify at that time was New Bedford. So even if it were agnostic in terms of geographic, I think probably the reality is that New Bedford may be the only one that actually has a practical solution to the problem. I mean, there might be some.
Yeah. I don't know where else in the New Bedford Harbor that other than this site that we are developing would, in the Port Authority's mind, would be suitable. There might be a private site, but I don't know of one that is, shovel ready to go with funding to have the suitable infrastructure for a roll-on, roll-off. So I mean, in my mind, I was under the impression that it was the RFP was a little bit more open-ended. That it was, we're looking for off-Cape a transportation network who has a site and a business model that makes sense.
We could expand it that way and enlarge the RFP that way as well. This is a very early stage. We're just looking now at the community interest.
Sure.
Um,
Sure. So, I mean, we are targeting trying to get our RFI out the door, maybe at the end of the month, maybe before the holidays, and get it marketed and get it in front of and in the hands of people that we think might be interested and out into the world more generally. And I think at that point we'll have a much better idea of the potential, of the site. I think one of the big upsides of the site is that it's farther outside of our historic city center. I mean, I think there have been conversations or pilots of projects done at State Pier, which is incredibly problematic for us given the proximity to all of our tourism activities. We don't want containers of garbage, coming into State Pier. And also it's not a city asset. So the city is going to disproportionately bear the impact of an operation in trucks, but is not going to benefit in any way. So that would be problematic for us. And the southern part of the harbor, the lower part of the harbor is just incredibly occupied with with our fishing industry.
Okay.
So if I may, I
Yes,
think,
I'm sorry, I think Doug had a question. Doug Brown, not Doug Siegel.
muted.
If I could just ask Mr. Paulson a question about the State Pier. So a couple of years ago, there was some surveys being done about the condition of the pier. And at that time, it was turning out that the condition was much worse than previously had been thought. Do you have any updates on what might be the projected fix for that pier? If it's going to be a major overhaul of pilings, or are you thinking about a bulkhead now? The reason I asked
it's not a city asset. So it's not under our jurisdiction. It's a state asset.
Right, but are you aware of any updates on the? No, nothing new.
No.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Bob, I'm sorry, I entered.
No, that's fine. So Justin, in terms of it, the proposal that we had provided to our board was that we'd be looking to issue an RFP for essentially off-Cape services to the vineyard. We weren't site specific. I think as Steve alluded to, that when we looked at this in the past, the New Bedford Harbor seemed to be the most logical choice. But there may be other opportunities somewhere else. But I think most of us expected to be that New Bedford would be playing a role in this. So.
Okay. Yeah. No. I mean that's logical. That's logical. I want to give the impression that New Bedford wants to play a role in solving this challenge, as long as it's not simply displacing a problem from the Cape to New Bedford. It's got to be an innovative solution that brings a benefit to us, and as well as solves the challenge facing the Cape, which I understand to be compelling and real. So, one thing to think about for the RFP, and I don't know how you would implement this into the RFP, but is to, instead of simply trying to procure a service that replicates what you currently have, and to just moving it to another port, is to try to procure a service that aims to reduce the overall number of trucks, period. So trying to develop.
I think you froze. Is that?
He appears to be the
Yeah,
only one that's frozen, yeah.
Yeah, I think it's his connection.
Okay, Justin, you're frozen. If you're able possibly to sign back in, maybe sign back off and sign back in, that might help.
He's gone.
Sounded like he was headed towards the idea of some other type of bulk freight rather than roll on, roll off.
Yes, that's what it sounded like to me.
Hey, and I had a question
Here
for
it
him too
comes.
about,
Welcome back.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
All right.
Justin, shut off your video and you should be better. If you should, there you go.
All right. No, I was just saying, perhaps, contemplating the objective of the RFP to be, instead of just relocating the same number of trucks from one port to another, but the aim is to find an operator that can develop a marine network that actually reduces the overall number of trucks on the road via a more sophisticated, expanded marine highway, if possible.
So, and you're
I had
looking to be a break bulk operation or something along that line?
No, it just is studying where the destination and the origin of the truck traffic, and instead of just having an A to B ship barge service, roll on, roll off barge or ferry or whatever it happens to be, but understand if there's another port that can be serviced on an expanded marine highway network so that the overall number of trucks actually on the roads actually decreases, and instead they're delivered by water.
And
I have
so
a question. Go ahead, Steve.
just continue with that. So the idea would be for the Steamship Authority to do a review of its freight customers and find out the origins of all the shipments, and then looking at the interstate highway routes to try to figure out what may be the closest suitable port for the majority of those shipments.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think zooming out and trying to figure out what the objective is, that it should be contemplated that maybe it's a blue sky objective, but I think it's a worthwhile one given how much more efficient and better for the environment moving goods by water is than truck, is studying whether or not there is an opportunity and that it's economically feasible and there's an operator willing to do it, instead of just A to B. Perhaps there's an A to B to C to D and back to A.
And you're saying that as far as the North Terminal 2 is, we have time to do that study because it's going to be.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think if there's the potential to have a more robust marine network that delivers on this objective of taking more trucks off the road, then that's I mean, I think it's almost an obligation.
Okay. All right. Leon, did you want to ask?
I just wanted to ask the question because we had talked earlier about rail service at availability. Is there rail service available at the second port?
No, not contemplated at the moment.
Okay. And
Thank you.
Doug Brown, were you raising your hand or adjusting your screen?
I was going to ask the same question about the rail service. And Justin, could you expand on North Terminal 1 timeline and what is slated for that site?
Right. North Terminal 1 is adjacent to the former EPA dewatering facility. It is a bulkhead expansion project. So phase 1 is a 490-foot expansion north from the EPA facility. And that is an 18-month project. It's the scale of that project is, it's adding 490 feet instead of 100, plus filling in many more acres of upland space. But that we expect to go out to bid also very shortly, and that's an 18-month project, so summer 2023.
Justin, I hope you don't mind if I try to take the benefit of your experience and ask you some questions that others might find to be not the smartest. But if we aren't looking at a facility for a roll-on, roll-off with trucks, are we looking at a container facility? Would that be something in the offing? What do you think are the alternatives to a roll-on, roll-off truck facility that would have to be both on the mainland and then on the vineyard as well?
Well, the problem with the container facility is it takes a lot of space because you need to have a place to put containers. That's a problem with a transload facility. You got to have a place to put the containers, and we just don't. I mean, you can pull up Google Maps again, and you can just it's apparent we don't have space to put containers. That's why we are really only contemplating a roll-on, roll-off, because we have no place to lay down or stage or transload containers. We don't have it. It's a space constraint.
Okay. So if the facility isn't a container facility or a roll-on, roll-off, are there any other types of facilities that we should be exploring?
I think so. You're talking about a supply chain network and what type you should be considering. That question, if I put on my supply chain manager hat, which I know just enough to be dangerous, is dictated by the volume of goods moving through the supply chain. It's dictated by the origin and the destination, and whether you prioritize speed, economy, or quality. So those are all questions you're going to have to ask yourself when you're figuring out how exactly are these goods going to be moving from point A to point B. If it's not a lot of containers and you can roll them on to a ferry type vessel or a barge, tug and barge, an integrated tug and barge, then that's easier because you don't need a lot of space. The vessel berths, it can even berth stern to or bow to onto the bulkhead with a ramp, and everything just drives on and dries off. There's nothing that needs to stage. Your labor is quite low. You don't have people working containers and lashings. It's really the only thing that I had considered. What's the only thing that really works for the North Terminal 2 site, honestly. There's no the scale of investment in infrastructure for a traditional container facility is not feasible, both from a amount of funding available and space. So yeah, we're really only talking about roll-on, roll-off. That's why I asked. It would be interesting to know, for 100-foot bulkhead and the size of space we have, if we have throughput constraints on how many trucks we could conceivably have through that site, and of course a sensitivity analysis to understand how that volume is impacted if we start putting constraints on when the site can be operating, is it 24/7? Is it only, daylight hours? And of course, with any other traffic mitigation, just to control the number of trucks on the road. So yeah, really, I hadn't thought about any type of distribution system other than roll on, roll off.
Steve, I had another question. Justin, if you're saying the site is small, how many trucks could be staged to roll on going the other way? I understand coming off the island, coming to New Bedford and rolling off and going the other way, but they're gonna go back probably.
Sure.
What's the availability of space for that?
Yeah, that's a good question. For the site, not a lot. But that is something that I would imagine, this is what the market needs to tell us. If there are solutions that are related to, sequencing and scheduling and having a very reliable, organized timeline of when everything shows up, not to have anything show up until the vessel is unloaded and then the trucks roll on. I think we would be, as you astutely figured out, we would be very limited in space for staging or marshaling trucks.
Doug Brown?
Yeah, I'm curious, Bob or Steve, could you give us an idea of how much area is required to stage a typical boat? Would an acre of area be sufficient to stage to fill one of your freight boats, for instance?
Yeah, I'd have to look at that. I was trying to figure it out myself just now on what we would need, but I think that has to be a follow-up question that we'd have to look at.
Right. Another question for Justin, if I could.
Go for it.
Yes.
Justin, I was taking some notes. I thought I heard you say that Site 2 was a simpler site to remediate, and it would be ready in 2023. But Site 1 also would be ready in 2023, but it's much more complex. Did I understand that correctly?
It's a bigger project. So it's almost 500 feet of bulkhead,
Right.
plus infill. So it's a much bigger project. It also is a bit more complicated because that infill and that bulkhead that's being created does take away water access to some of our leaseholders. Right. And so there are some legal rights that they have of first refusal and such that would makes that project complicated.
But is the timeline parallel, pretty similar, that 2023 projected completion on both sites?
Yes. Yeah.
Okay.
The North Terminal extension, not North Terminal 2, but North Terminal extension, we expect to be done maybe towards the end of summer 2023. Now,
is there any opportunity for freight to travel through that site, or is it mostly spoken for already?
Nothing is earmarked for that site, but like I said, depending on what we do with it, there are other interests that have right of first refusal. So we don't have anything earmarked for that right now.
Right. The scallop fishery and so forth. I understand. Right. Is there rail service to that site?
There is rail service to the former EPA dewatering facility, because that basically right into the building, since that's how they used to move the contaminated material once it was dewatered to the disposal site in Minnesota or Michigan or wherever it went.
Okay. How many acres is that site? And I know it's tricky to answer because you have to work out the negotiations with the abutters who have that right of first refusal, but do you have an idea of what type of potential acreage may be available?
Yeah. Let's see. It would be about an extra 3.5 acres.
Okay. Is that still on the table for a possibility, or are we gonna deal with the RFI for site 2 first and then see how that goes? Is that the thinking?
Yeah, so the sequencing is an RFI for North Terminal 2, because it's, as I said, it's one parcel. The North Terminal project, once the land is created, will be technically multiple parcels. So it no matter how you slice it, it's a much more complicated site. It's bigger.
It'll take longer to figure out.
As you said, there's a lot of abutters. It's a more complicated legal situation. We will most likely eventually RFI that site and most likely eventually RFP that site, but that's down the road. I think we can wrap our heads around the potential, the market potential and feasibility for North Terminal 2 much more quickly.
Okay. So I guess that'll be our homework, is to figure out if site 2 is anything that might work and start with that.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, we are already drafting an RFI, so we feel like that before too long we'll have a good idea of the potential for that site.
Okay. Would there be an option for a person that responds to the RFI if they wanted to extend the infrastructure with the rail, or are there impediments to that? That you're aware
Oh,
of?
that's a good question. I don't know of any practical impediments to extending rail aside from cost. But I can certainly follow up in a next meeting. I can share that information.
Okay, because there are so many opportunities now for infrastructure improvements, especially related to
Right.
marine and waterfront.
Right. I don't know what the timeline would be for permitting and all that. But I can certainly find out.
Okay, great.
We have that expertise and that knowledge in house to get that answered.
That would be great to know. Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, of course. It's a good question.
I hope you don't mind, but when you are developing your RFI for the North Terminal 2 site, will there be any consideration of a potential freight service of some type between that site and the vineyard included in that as a prospect for the potential operator of that site?
Yes. I believe that we would, yes, because we want to know, like I said, backing up from what we're trying to determine with an RFI is one of the outcomes that we need to achieve is what would the throughput be? What would the pro forma and business model be? And given there are a number of different ways that we can levy, different structures and different types of tariffs levied on goods coming across a ramp, to get an idea of what the economic return to the city would be. So yeah, we would certainly specify the route network because we need to know what the business model is and what the return to the city would be.
Oh, Bob, sorry, I just count on people to interject themselves. So go ahead, Bob.
Steve, if you still have the map up, it might be helpful. There's, it's come up a couple of times here about North Terminal 1. And so just for perspective on everyone, it may be good just to point out where that is as well. So everyone knows where we're looking, where that location is.
It's that, oh gosh, where it says Eastern Fisheries. It's that white building just north of where it says Eastern. That building right there is the former EPA dewatering facility. And the bulkhead will extend north of that, all the way up to where it kind of curves into that gully. Yeah, so it'll go up right about up to there. No, it will go to like a right angle. So it'll extend past where that barge is, where those fishing boats are tied up, and it will then go at a right angle into the shoreline. Yep. So that will all get filled in.
Okay. And again, North Terminal 2 is up here.
That's right.
You talked about public lands. Is this is Ralph Packer's property here?
That's right.
Would you consider that potentially suitable for a roll-on, roll-off operation?
I'm not knowledgeable enough about that site, honestly. I mean, initially, it seems doable, but again, I don't know where he's focusing his attention and his resources.
Okay.
And I roll on, roll off is often lower margin than other waterfront uses. It's difficult to do. And so, as a business, when you're evaluating, how to leverage your site and activate it for its best and highest use, roll on, roll off is often a difficult proposition. So, but I really can't comment because
all right.
I don't know what he's got focused on.
I just thought I would ask. Thank you.
Yeah.
Is anything you're doing at the North Terminal 1 site going to affect his operations? Do you know?
Not that I know of.
Okay. Doug,
If I could share that, just a quick note that in speaking with Mr. Packer in the past, I don't remember if it was one of our meetings or another meeting, he did mention that he actually took and made a preliminary design of a rail spur to his property, but he didn't take it any further than the initial design, just giving it thought.
Did he have a rough estimate of the cost of that?
Didn't think to ask him that.
Yeah.
And I think it was an older design, so maybe not that relevant now anyway.
Yeah, I know it's not New York City, but my only experience dealing with rail is in New York City, and it was just like everything in New York was just astronomically expensive, both to put it in and take it out. But perhaps it's different. But yeah, it's to permit the materials, the labor, the time. It's a fairly daunting perspective.
Yeah, that may be why he stopped at preliminary design.
Justin, I have a question. I thought I heard you say earlier on that when you issue your RFI, one of the things you'll be looking at is how the proposed use would benefit the city. Now, have there been thoughts given to what those benefits are that the city is actually looking for? Is it strictly an economic decision, or are there other factors that the city would be looking at in terms of the use?
Yeah, I mean, the other big one is job creation. How many jobs would it create? Is it basically, one guy kind of hanging around and watching the trucks go in and out, or is this a more hands-on, labor-intensive operation that has 10, 20 jobs associated with it?
Okay. Thank you.
That's really the big one. Yeah. And then also we also want to make sure that we don't have more trucks than necessary on the roads. And so, understanding, traffic mitigation and making sure that it's a balance of what incremental value does it bring, and is that enough to offset what that operation brings to the community?
Does anyone else have any more questions for Justin Folsom?
I have a question. Are there maps and description of the property available, including, the abutting uses, and if there might be the ability to expand onto abutting properties? Because I think it would be interesting or important to have real direct information about what's going on there now. And
Yeah, certainly. I mean, all this information will be in the RFI. I'm happy to share all that information with you.
Thank you very much.
yeah, on the map, I wasn't clear as to where the rail connection or the rail lines currently are. It appeared that there was a rail line in the vicinity of the property, but I wasn't sure exactly.
Yeah.
What it was.
Yeah, there is, because as I mentioned, there's rail. You can kind of see the rail yard right there. Yeah, exactly. And there is a spur that comes down and goes into the former EPA building, into that notch that's missing there. That's where the rail line goes into that building.
Mhm.
So that's,
Steve, if you zoom in, you probably can see it.
yeah.
I was just curious as to what filling in that triangle of water there is going to reduce shoreline for somebody, for those abutting properties. Are those town of New Bedford or city of New Bedford properties currently?
That's a good question. Yeah, I'm not really prepared to talk about that. All I can say is that when we do fill in that basin that's there, that those abutters have certain rights to the new land that's being created.
Okay.
But again, I'm not really here to talk about North Terminal 1. I really want to keep the conversation focused on North Terminal 2.
And that's what I was talking about, because you're filling in that basin, you call it.
That's right. That gully that's right there, right?
So that's currently gives people shore access that have those.
Oh
abutting
yeah,
property.
yeah. That's a very good question. I actually don't have an answer to that right now, but I certainly can find out.
Okay. Right. Yes, Julian.
Thank you, Steve. Justin, I apologize. I had to jump up for a couple minutes during some of your comments, but did I hear you say with regard to the North Terminal 2 project that there was potentially some federal EDA funds that would support that improvement?
Yeah, that project is funded by an EDA grant, correct?
Okay. So you think you have sufficient resources, presuming that no complications arise through this federal funding to accomplish the process, or you think some additional funds may need to be forthcoming? Just curious.
No, I mean, we feel like the project is sufficiently funded. It's actually part of a larger project. The filling in of and creation of North Terminal 2 is actually a component of a bigger project that includes bulkhead rehabilitation and refendering for a number of other assets in the harbor, including Pier 3, Steamship Pier, and the South Terminal fish houses. That original project included other sites in the harbor that after further surveying, we decided that it wasn't worth it. Those assets needed more significant capital improvements before we could refender them. So we pulled them out of the project. The only thing I'll say is that I'm sure everyone knows that we're currently facing a massive scarcity of material, and that every day that goes by, projects become more and more expensive. But this particular project, we feel quite good about coming in within budget. Also because the fill comes from dredging within the harbor. So there's a bit of synergy with some of our other projects going on in the harbor.
And Justin, just so I'm clear, because I've been under a misunderstanding, the lawsuit that we read about earlier this year, that involved the North Terminal 1 site. That doesn't have any implications for the North Terminal 2 site.
That is correct. The lawsuit was brought against the North Terminal expansion project, but that lawsuit has been completely dismissed.
Right. Okay. John, please unmute yourself.
That's one of my worst habits. Question for Justin. Justin, you probably had this out there for a while in terms of in the public about your plans. Have there been any parties that have expressed interest in number 2?
No, it's probably out there, but we have not purposefully, raised the awareness of this project. I think this project in the EDA grant, most of the attention has been on the other side of the project, which is the pier refendering. It's actually what most people are focused on because it's quite needed, frankly, in the harbor, and it's going to be a huge benefit for the users of the port, the current users of the port. So it's actually a much more hotter topic than the North Terminal 2 project. But we do believe that with a well-written RFI and a robust marketing effort to get this out there, that we will get people indicating their interest in the site. I just go back to the scarcity of space and the overcrowding in the harbor, that this is 100 feet of bulkhead. So there's going to be interest in it. I'm sure of it. The demand.
I think you just froze again. Sorry, Justin. If you could maybe sign off and sign back in again.
I did have a follow-up question with Justin, if he does reappear. While we're waiting for
Here it comes.
here he goes. Yep.
There he is.
All right.
Sorry, how much of that did you hear?
Up until you said you had some, you would expect other parties to be interested.
Yeah, I do. Simply because given the amount of activity in the port, the demand for space, by orders of magnitude outweighs the current supply that we have for space. So we figure there's going to be interest.
Just one more question, if I may, Justin. It sounds like you're very close to this, obviously, and working with the feds on grants. Do you think any prospective freight carrier would also be capable of exercising some grants that might be available?
Yeah, potentially. I'm not paying too much attention to funding opportunities, for private entities. We're focusing on grant opportunities that are available to us. But I would guess that that is a more likely addition to the funding stack versus, you know, a huge capital investment from the private party itself. Just given the margins on a roll-on, roll-off, they would be difficult to get an ROI on that.
Well, Justin, given that the North Terminal 2 site will have a roll-on, roll-off facility, what other uses or purposes do you anticipate will be made of that, if not for a freight service to Martha's Vineyard?
Yeah, so just to clarify, the project that we have designed and will deliver is just a bulkhead. So that's why I was mentioning beyond simply a bulkhead and providing roll-on, roll-off infrastructure like a roto ramp or some kind of ramp, that would need to be designed and permitted and built, funded and built beyond the project that we're delivering. So we are delivering a waterfront site, and any specific or niche infrastructure need would go up beyond that to support a specific use.
So it's conceivable that the North Terminal 2 will not even have a roll-on, roll-off facility.
Right. I mean, again, we are not building a roll-on, roll-off site. It's not designed and it's not funded for a roll-on, roll-off operation. It's designed to have 100 feet of bulkhead.
So if I could jump in if nobody's waiting. So for instance, it's going to be a competitive type of response where we could be competing with an idea of a roll-on, roll-off or some other vehicular traffic competing against, say, for instance, a scallop fisherman with a refrigeration unit or something that may be more profitable.
It's our interpretation that the site, given its proportions, its shape, is not suitable for a processing facility or a cold storage, unless someone comes along with an incredibly innovative idea, which is again why the roll-on, roll-off idea has surfaced as a potential there. We certainly could park fishing vessels there, but again, you know, if we can create a use that creates jobs and solves, contributes to an innovative solution to a very compelling problem, and returns a greater economic benefit than parking, berthing fishing vessels or crew transfer vessels, or other work boats there, then yeah, we'd be really interested in determining if that opportunity is there.
Okay, and just one more question, if I could. Is there any other adjacent facility that might partner with this site to provide more acreage?
That idea has not been approached, so I wouldn't be able to say one way or another. Yeah, that would be something that we would need to explore and have and initiate those conversations. So I can't give you an answer today.
Okay, thank you.
Justin, we usually say public comment for the last, but would you mind if we asked, there are 20 attendees out there, if we asked if anyone had any questions for you about the project since you're here?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
So I'm asking the attendees if anyone has any questions for Mr. Paulson. I think we've exhausted the list of subjects. He's learned much more than anyone could anticipate being on the job just for a little while at New Bedford. He's certainly absorbed everything.
I will say that I'm fortunate because I don't think this was in my bio that you read, but my first job was towing containers of freight from Alaska to Seattle. So I'm fairly up to speed on roll on, roll off and container barge, intermodal networks. So yeah, I have a lot of experience towing containers of garbage in the middle of winter from Alaska to Seattle. So I know.
Great. I hope
know
you
all
don't mind
about
us taking advantage of your experience. So we have we have one person, Phil Logan. I believe I'm going to allow him to talk. Wish me luck in this. I haven't done this before. Phil, you're on.
Thanks very much. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay. My question is, what was formerly defined as North Terminal, well, currently defined as North Terminal 1, consisted of 2 lobes, if you will. The southern one having to do with the scallop repair facility, and the northern one having to do principally around Packer and some other people, and the barging facility. Now I'm understanding that Mr. Paulson's suggesting that North Terminal 1 is cut back in design so that only the southern lobe is involved in being expanded and filled in for bulkhead. So I don't understand what's going on. Is the northern lobe of that area going to be left alone so that Ralph Packer can continue barging? Or, I mean, Ed Markey got the money for the filling in the whole thing. Is that northern lobe going to be filled in as well? And if so, what does Ralph Packer do about barging stuff to and from the vineyard? Thank you.
All right, let me go through and I'll share my screen again because and that's the North Terminal 2 site. We're back at the North Terminal 1 site.
Right.
Justin,
Right. So the current funded project is about 490 feet of bulkhead extension from the corner there where there's the barge extending from the bulkhead. You move your cursor to the right. Right there. So 490 feet due north from there is the current project. And many of you probably are aware, probably even know better than I, since I've only been on the job for 3 months, that the original project was almost 1,000 feet, 900 and some feet. When that project went out to bid, it came back over budget. So after design, value engineering and simulating different options, the decision was made to scale back the extension and have a first phase of about 490 feet. So that's currently what is scoped and what we expect to go out to bid shortly.
and will it end about where the arrow is now? And then
somewhere right around there, right? Right before where it starts to curve into that, right, somewhere right in there. Yeah, that's right.
So this inlet will still be there?
That is again, our project is for a 490 foot bulkhead extension. So I think at some point we expect to complete the fully permitted and designed project, but that will require funding that we don't currently have.
Okay.
Good. Thank you.
No one else? Justin, thank you so much for your time. This has been extraordinarily informative. I told my board several months, if not a year ago, that the long range Vineyard Transportation Task Force was in the fact finding mode, and this certainly proves it for the rest of us here. I think we're going to have to go back a little bit to the drawing board and figure out what to do. It seems to me that an RFP is a little bit premature unless we make it open-ended. And I don't know whether such an open-ended RFP is in the best interest of all the communities if it doesn't attract anybody to respond. But we're going to have a discussion about that, I think. Doug Brown?
I was just going to say we could consider designing an RFP around the parameters that Mr. Paulson has offered with the 1 acre site with 100 foot of frontage, and consider whether or not it makes sense, or at least run it by our group and see if we come to consensus on it.
I mean, but that may not even be with a roll-on, roll-off facility there.
Well, that would have to be developed, and we
Right.
would likely have to reach out to legislators for some funding, which I've already been doing, saying that any New Bedford Port Service is going to take some type of infrastructure investment from some sort of government entity, whether it's state or federal. I would think we would look for some help on that as part of the package.
It might even be worthwhile I hate to use the word a consultant, to come in and just look at this with an open mind. And with Justin saying, you may not want to go with just taking trucks back and forth from any location. Look at someone with a lot of experience in the transportation industry as a whole, and try to come up with some system that makes more sense for both the Vineyard, Falmouth, and New Bedford, and just not limit it to this. I don't know.
That's another good point.
I just throw it out.
Yeah.
So. Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much, Justin, for everything. You can stay in.
No, I'm glad I could help out. And again, yeah, I mean, we're really interested in understanding, how we could be part of, of solving this. So yeah, really happy that we approach this as kind of an open conversation, and happy to do it again when it's needed.
Well, and good luck in New Bedford. Thank you.
Thanks very much. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. All right. On to the next item, approval of the minutes of the April 29th, 2021 meeting in public session. I know
So
Leon
moved.
is going to object to he moved it. He was going to object to the length of the minutes, but that's all right. So a second? Okay, I see John raising his hand. We have to do this by roll call vote. Mr. Brathwaite,
Brathwaite, aye.
Mr. Brown,
Aye.
Mr. Cahill,
Cahill, aye.
Mr. Chattonover,
Chattonover, aye.
Mr. Ferranti.
Ferranti abstain.
Okay. Mr. Cedarholm,
Cedarholm abstain.
Mr. Suso,
So I,
and Mr. Vercruz.
Yes, accepted.
Okay, thank you. Given what we just discussed, before we go on to, I think Bob and I and Terrence and others at the staff should probably go back to the drawing board a little bit and see what makes sense as a possible suggestions, and come back to the task force with some alternative approaches to this. I know that the Falmouth Transportation Committee had, with Ed DeWitt, had recommended that we try to apply for grants for freight transportation improvements. We were thinking that those grant applications would be a joint application with possibly New Bedford, the Martha's Vineyard Commission, et cetera, for this type of a freight operation. But it looks like that's not in the cards, at least for the immediate future. And so maybe we have to go and rethink that about what type of grant application we can submit that may look towards a more holistic approach to this problem, and see what can be done in the interest of all the communities. And that's something that we can do at the staff level and come back to you and present and get your input before we present it to the Port Council and then to the board. I don't know if that's all right with you.
Sounds
Makes
like the only
sense.
way to go.
Okay. All right. Then let me, yes, Doug, sorry.
Mr. Sayers, has been any thought of steamship actually operating a freight service if there's no RFP response from private vendors?
Well, at this point, I think it's fair to say that we don't have the vessels to do that. When I left there, we were going to have the luxury of having a spare boat during the summer season. And that ended, I think, in 2018 when we put the Sanctity on for the summer from the Vineyard. And so we have no spare boat to provide for the service. That's what we had proposed to do back in, you may remember, almost 20 years ago in 2002. We were going to put the Sanctity as the freight boat from New Bedford, but the city of New Bedford at that time did not allow us to operate from there after we had the pilot project with Seabulk. So we have an aggressive capital plan already. It requires, when I left, the idea that we're going to have to replace or major refurbish a boat every 5 years or so. That's a huge capital investment. And I think our concern is that if we stretch ourselves too thin, it's going to affect our finances. So the idea was to get a private operator whose costs are lower because labor is a big portion of our operating costs to do it. And it would be a more efficient operation. It would be some type of open competition, relatively open competition, where we would assist the private operator and make available our reservations, or even our ticketing facilities, even our facilities. And that would probably be the most efficient way of doing it. But we still don't have a place to operate from.
Right. I certainly understand and agree with that being the initial thought, but I'm just curious if there's thought for a backup plan in case there's a lack of response. But I guess we should wait and see what the response is first before worrying about it.
Right. And it doesn't address the issue of where do we operate from. So, yes, John.
If I could ask a question of Bob Davis. Bob, have you had a chance to run the numbers, just a quick analysis of what 100 feet would buy us?
100 feet, yeah, in terms of a vessel. Yeah, so you go on the basis, say the Woods Hole is a beam of 64 feet, so you put some fendering out there. So I think 100 feet would probably be, pretty much the minimum amount of bulkhead that would be required to berth a vessel. I'll have to go back and look at how many trucks we'd be able to stage on an acre of property, knowing that we'd have to be getting vehicles on and off a vessel. So I'll have to look at that to see what that would buy, what that would potentially buy us. So.
I mean, first blush, it just doesn't seem like a lot.
Yeah, again, I think 100 feet would probably be about the minimum amount that we would need. Just knowing the fendering systems that we'd have to put in.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Doug, I didn't know whether you were raising your hand again or no.
No, sorry, I have to reach across my iPad and I'm hitting the mute button.
Okay, all right. You can keep your sound on. You don't, unless there's a background noise, it doesn't matter. Anyone else? If not, we will get back in touch with you with the time for the next meeting, trying to keep tabs on all of your schedules. You're an active group, you have lots of obligations, and we know that. We try to look at the calendars of the Martha's Vineyard Commission, the Dukes County Commissioners, the Falmouth Select Board, et cetera. And now we're looking at the Falmouth DDIC as well to see what their meeting schedules are. So
I do have one
Steve,
last-
you going to ask if the press want to speak, ask a question?
Well, I gave public comment earlier on and only Phil Logan raised his hand. And no one else has, as far as I can see.
Steve, I believe Doug Brown has a question.
Yes.
Yep, just one more question, Steve, if I could. Are we going to, you're going to do some more homework to determine whether or not the site might be feasible and what those parameters might entail? And then we'll have another meeting. And if we do come to consensus that this site might be workable, will we draft a plan or a provision or some kind of a, we may need a consultant, but what I'm getting at is, will we kind of make a combined effort, as you referenced earlier, maybe the town of Falmouth and the vineyard representatives and the steamship authority with a combined request to legislators to fund this with infrastructure money? If we realize that we got to build a roll-on structure and do other improvements to the lot.
My concern about that is that what I'm hearing from Justin today is that they may decide that there is a better use for that property for the city of New Bedford. And that they may decide that they're only doing the bulkhead. And then he said a few times that roll on, roll off is a low margin operation and therefore less profitable. And it doesn't bring as much labor to the city of New Bedford because all you do is have someone there looking at the trucks as they go on and off, as opposed to having people work at the site. So if we were to move that forward, it seems to be potentially in conflict with what the city of New Bedford wants. And so I don't know if that would be something that we're trying to get everyone to get an agreement. And so I don't know whether that would be constructive.
I think that if I could, I think that what Mr. Paulson was saying is just advising us of what we're up against when we say that we might have an interest in that site. He's just, I think, cautioning us that the use that we're proposing is not a margin that's often workable. But in my previous conversations with legislators, I've always said that, in my opinion, the state or federal government, someone should get involved with subsidizing this service, both the infrastructure and the ongoing service. And that subsidy could somehow perhaps facilitate an embarkation fee or whatever you call it for the city of New Bedford to allow these vehicles to travel through their city and give them some incentive. So that's why I'm trying to get this team effort idea of presenting this to legislators as a package, that maybe it would be a bill. I don't know how it would be packaged, but I think that if it's going to be successful, there's going to have to be some sort of element like that involved.
I now see what you're saying. I understand. So the idea is that if otherwise, if left to the private sector, the freight service to the vineyard may not be the best option for the city of New Bedford, that there might be a package that the state may put together at our request that might make it a more attractive proposal for New Bedford to dedicate at least a roll-on, roll-off facility to our use as well as someone else's.
Exactly, because I think that we can certainly justify that the need is there to make this service available because we are running out of capacity. I mean, I know the Hyannis facility is beyond capacity and we're quickly approaching capacity in Woods Hole, I would think, with the number of days and the number of trips. So it seems something that I would think could be an argument for intervention by legislators to provide some sort of a subsidy for this type of service and make it more feasible.
That's a good point. So that's something that we'll talk, Bob and the staff and I will talk about as well.
Okay, great.
All right. Thank you so much, all of you.
Okay.
Need a
I
motion.
probably will not meet by Thanksgiving, so I hope you all have a great holiday.
Need a motion, Steve.
Move to adjourn.
Thank you, sorry. Second. there a second? John raised
I'll
his hand.
second.
Second.
Mr. Braithwaite,
Brathwaite, aye.
Mr. Brown,
Brown eye.
Mr. Cahill,
Cahill, aye.
Mr. Chattonover.
Chattonover, aye. Thanks, everyone.
Okay, Mr. Ferranti, you can vote on this one.
Yeah, Ferranti, aye.
Mr. Cedarholm,
Cedarholm, yes.
Mr. Suzo,
Russo, aye.
and Mr. Veracruz.
Cruzy, yes.
Great. Thank you all. Have a great
Thank
holiday.
you.
Thank
Thank
you.
you. Everyone. Have great holidays.
Thanks,
Take
everyone.
care.